We're in the midst of radical transformation of our dear countries, and Canada is certainly not exempt. So we're all going to have to build, build, build. Engineers Canada forecasted the need for 100,000 engineers over the period of 2015 to 2025. I couldn't find the latest forecasts for the next 10 years, but I'm assuming it will be significant as we continue to build this great country. This episode will hopefully inspire some of us to take on the challenge of building. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm really excited to be speaking to a world-class leading authority on tall buildings. His name is Dr. Mir M. Ali. And just by way of background, let me say that he completed his PhD from the University of Waterloo. For our global audience, let me just say that Waterloo is Canada's MIT. It's renowned for its program in computer science, engineering, and mathematics. Dr. Ali is currently Professor Emeritus and former chairman of the Structures Division of the School of Architecture at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. His awards and publications are far too numerous to mention, so I will put them in the show notes. Now, before starting, I also should mention that he is very special to me, as he is my uncle, my mother's brother. In Bengali, we call the uncle on the mother's side Mama. So just to keep my interview of him as authentic as possible, I will call him Mama, as I usually do. Welcome, Mama. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for your good introduction.
You're welcome. How's the weather in Chicago?
It's very nice. It's sunny. And in fact, I sat outside on my sun deck in the morning and drank my tea there. It was really nice.
This is the first time, though, that I'm having this conversation with you about your life's work, and I can find out more about you.
Sure.
So can you explain to the listeners, why have human beings been so fascinated with tall buildings?
Yes, good question. I think in the ancient times, when our ancestors thought of building something, they developed the skills and tools and whatever was needed. They first thought of their own habitation, how to live, to have a shelter, but they were looking up the sky and they thought, once they have the instinct of spirituality, okay, which humans have, they thought of the heavens up in the sky. And even today we do that, right? People, when they pray, they just do like that, right?
That is true.
And so they thought how we can go close to God, okay, close to heavens. And of course, humans have the instinct of developing a domination over the nature, okay, in a very rudimentary stage or rudimentary way. So obviously they could go up. When you build, you can only go up, right? Generally. And that's why they started with the Tower of Babel in Babylonia, the ziggurats in Mesopotamia, pyramids in Egypt, and subsequently some religious structures like the Christian cathedrals, tall cathedrals. And then the Hindu temple shafts, Buddhist pagodas, and Islamic minarets, the mosque. So they all go up, and basically that's what initially, started the construction of tall structures, not necessarily skyscrapers, but tall buildings.
So is it, this desire to be close to heaven or God, or what is that?
Yes, it is. We cannot reach God, okay, that easily. And when I think this is my opinion about that, when the ancients developed some form of intelligence, they developed the knowledge of things,
Yep.
and analytical power, power of observation, power of imagination, all these instincts. Then their curious mind started looking at themselves and said, where from we came, right?
Yep.
Who created us?
Yep.
Everything is self-acting. We were born, nobody has any control how we get conceived. We know how we get conceived, but who really makes it happen?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we procreate, our generation goes on and on. And then, okay, all these urges come into us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where from all this is coming, right? So anyway, I would not go too deep into that. So they started thinking about something must be there up above. How can we go to the heavens, right? Only way we can go is if we build upward, we will be closer to God. If we are on ground, we are not that close. If
Yep.
we can build something tall and go up, at least we are somewhat closer to God, right?
Yeah, definitely. What I didn't know is that these tall buildings had that connection with the spiritual aspect of humankind. And I want to know, Mama, what made you particularly inspired to go into this field?
Well, when I came to Canada in 1970, I was, of course, in Ottawa, where your parents were, okay? You were, I think, a teenager or something like that,
Yeah.
or even younger. So at that time, right after I came here, I went to New York for a meeting with a former employer in an American company where I worked before. So I wanted to go to them and see if there is a good job or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So that I can start working there, and then I will do my master's degree because my mind was not fully settled. I just left my country. I came late, all this personal stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so first of all, I saw the Toronto Dominion Bank on the highway, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And coming from Bangladesh, at that time, there was no building that tall. It was all short buildings in those days, okay? So that drew my attention. Okay, I suddenly being a civil engineer, structural engineering is a branch of civil engineering, right? So it drew my attention, and structure was my favorite subject as a civil engineering student. So then I went to New York. I saw the Empire State Building and Chrysler Building, all these buildings. I even went to the top of this Empire State Building out of my curiosity. And when I saw Empire State Building and I looked at the city from the top, I said, wow. Okay. I had that wow feeling. And somehow something clicked into me. Okay. I said, I wish I could design a building very tall because then I can design any small building.
Was it the majesty of that building? Was it, did it speak to you in terms of that your own spiritual nature? or was it something else? Was it the wealth of the city that was basically shown in that in the buildings, or something else?
Well, it looked very majestic to me, going all the way to the top, right? So far high above ground, defying gravity, right? It defied nature.
True.
So that was one thing. And then the second thing was how humans built it, designed it, and built it that high, okay? And being an engineer, and I was an ambitious engineer, you can say. That's why I left my country and came to this North America to study and learn.
For sure.
So I said, you know, this is something that is really, really exhilarating, okay? And I get this feeling in me that humans can achieve anything, okay?
Wow.
Of course, before that, they went to the moon a couple of years before that, right?
Right.
So on Earth, even here, we can go not to the moon, of course, but we can build, very tall without the collapse of the structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Sounds like there was a creative, your creative juices were also flowing. How can, we build, uh, these structures,
yes,
you know?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, that was the main idea because I always liked the idea of, well, I always liked nature. So I was very spatial in my nature and outlook.
Okay.
I liked space, and
Mhm.
I like nature. And then these are artificially made structures. This is not natural, man-made.
Right.
So when I saw that, I said, oh, wow, man can build, 102-story building.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something challenging. So
Well,
that inspired me. And
sure.
I was waiting for some opportunity.
For a tall building, I suspect that you need a ton of money to build one,
Yes.
right?
Any city, you will see a lot of tall buildings, they have money. Some people there have money, okay? Or somebody poured money there to build it. So
Right.
money speaks everywhere, right?
Yeah,
If you don't have money, don't think of even a nice home. Forget about a tall building, right?
that's right.
So that's another area, the economics of the building, okay, the building economics.
Mhm.
And I wrote in one of my books, I had a chapter on that. So I talked with builders and some economists and people like that because I was curious. I wanted to add that into my chapter because people don't think about it.
Right, right.
And
So it's
yeah,
a corporation, like it's usually corporations that fund these kinds of
they
buildings.
fund this,
Yeah.
but then how the funding is allocated, where it goes, and where it is spent. In other words, how much money go for the structure, how much money go for the aesthetics of the building, how much money go for plumbing system, this system. So there has to be some economic analysis so that ultimately you get some optimal cost, okay? Optimal cost so that the owners can afford. so,
Yeah,
so economics is very important to understand and the wealth management and all that, very important in your personal life and your professional life.
that's right. What are the main tallest structures in, say, the world? If you could name just a few, so everybody
Mhm.
kind of has an idea. So,
Well, the first tallest building that had been um, known was, of course, Empire State Building at one time. And then came Sears Tower in Chicago. And, um, and many other tall buildings came after that. And then the World Trade Center that were demolished by a terrorist attack. And then, of course, there is a new one, World Trade Center 1, So there's a new one that was built there, but with a different architecture. Okay. And then, of course, there are many. I looked at some Canadian building. They are not as tall. Even the tallest there was not really that tall.
What is the
So I would not.
tallest?
Hmm?
What is the tallest in Canada? I actually have behind me the skyline of Toronto because we have lots of tall buildings.
Yes, yes, but they are not as tall as these buildings that I mentioned. That's the. I'm just talking about the tallest building.
Right, right.
You know, Vancouver has a lot of tall buildings.
As
Toronto has,
well.
every city, Montreal,
Yeah.
but their height is limited.
Mhm.
Okay, they are not as tall.
Okay.
So most of the tall buildings or tallest buildings are in USA, and then China, Korea,
Mhm.
and the Middle East. Okay.
Right.
Other countries also have, like India has some tall buildings, and then South America also has some tall buildings, you know, but they are not as tall. That's why we know them, but when we talk about the tallest buildings, we talk about all these other buildings, like in Petronas Towers, okay, in Kuala Lumpur, or Taipei 101 in Taipei, you know, and then Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building right now, that's in Dubai. So there are many others. The Shard, that is in London, okay. So there are, and I can go on with a few more names, okay.
In Canada, so I've got the Toronto skyline behind me, and there is the CN Tower, which is the tallest structure in Canada.
But it's not a tall building.
But it's not
Sorry.
a building. That's what I found out when I Googled it. It's like, oh, that's not considered a building.
I see the skyline also, okay? And there are a lot of tall buildings, but they are not as tall as I mentioned. I can see that. So that's why in the literature, you would not see too many Canadian buildings mentioned even.
I see.
It's all, you know,
Interesting to know. Interesting.
America and China and Korea and Middle East. Okay? These are the main areas.
Okay. And I was wondering, did you meet or work with the renowned Fazlur Khan? He was the Bangladeshi-born engineer slash architect who designed the Sears Tower.
Yeah, of course, I worked with him. I was fortunate because he had a short life. When I was there, only for less than 2 years, he passed away. He went to a business trip in Saudi Arabia and he passed away over there at the age of 52.
Oh my goodness.
And the Engineering News Record magazine mentioned that the world has been robbed of a great genius who would do so many other innovations.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is, within that age, 52, he did so much. You would not believe I'm in the same field, right?
Yes.
He's not um, known for just the Sears Tower. That's a structure he built, okay, he designed, or Hancock Center. But his main fame started with his theoretical work. While he was working on projects, he was doing research. He was teaching at IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology. Okay, he was teaching there. He was working at Skidmore, Owings and Merrill with abbreviated SOM. And the main reason he is known is something called tubular design.
I see.
I don't think I will go into details, but I cannot avoid saying that. He gave the tall buildings life, okay? He is like many people called him the father of modern tall buildings. And then, and also he was sometimes called Einstein of structural engineering because his thinking was different.
you wrote a paper on the genius of Fazlur Khan, did you
Yeah,
not?
I wrote a book.
You wrote a book. Oh, wow.
Yes,
Okay. Um,
Art of the Skyscraper. Yeah.
and maybe you can give us the Coles Notes version. Or,
Well, the book covers a lot of things there, so I cannot do that here. But I will just say what innovations he did, right? So
Mhm.
that you know the magnitude of this person, right?
Okay.
He um, he was a born innovator. Let me put it that way. When he saw that he was building, they were building structures like Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, and other shorter buildings. They all use the same structural system called a rigid frame structure.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the structural system. And he realized that the scale of the building changes everything. When you have a 30-story building versus 20 stories versus 90 stories, you cannot use the same system, okay?
Right.
You have to find out at what height a certain system will be appropriate,
Yeah.
okay? He developed a chart, okay, showing heights versus the structural system. Okay, so the structural system was this, rigid frame for that, shear wall system that, and then this system, that system. He developed a few systems, and eventually he has something called tubular systems. And before that, it was not known. People would just design using beams and columns, and the columns were inside the building.
Mhm.
Okay, if you go to any older building, which is not a tubular system, you will see all the columns, floor columns, are inside the building. In the tubular buildings, you would not see that. There may be some just to carry the floor, okay, itself, but not the structure as a whole. Because as the building gets taller, wind takes over. It's not just the weight.
Right.
Wind wants to topple it, right?
Right.
So you need a very stiff and sturdy structure, right?
Mhm.
So he kind of said that, okay, if you go to 40 stories, this, 60 stories, this, 80 stories, this. So he developed a chart. So he did that in the 1960s, late 1960s, okay? But nobody, when I was doing my research, okay, I went to the University of Illinois to teach.
Mhm.
I was doing research, so I was thinking, why nobody has updated that chart,
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
So I started doing some research, and I had one of my former students, he's a professor now at Yale University. So I said, I'm working on a paper. So I will write a paper and I have to do some research. I want you to work with me. So we developed, okay, I was really doing thing and supervising what he was doing. So what we developed is that there are other systems because the structural systems have also changed with the intervention of time. That
Right.
was 1960s,
Yeah.
and I think the first paper we had was 2007, the
Mhm.
paper that I was referring to. And it has got so many people, it has influenced so many people.
Mhm.
And I came up with some names of the systems, classified them, and then under each classification, different types of systems. We published it. I should mention him. He worked with me.
Mhm.
And then after 10 years, we said, well, let us review again because there have been some newer structures, taller and new systems. So we reviewed that and the paper was published, I think, in 2018.
Okay.
And he was telling me, Professor Ali, can we do another one 10 years later? That will be 2028. Okay. And I said, well, they're still far off, but you see, we are almost approaching that. Uh,
Actually, I had a question. I wanted to circle back to the World Trade Center,
yeah.
um, which, that represented New York for 3 decades until 9/11. And I was wondering, did that change anything about people's perceptions of tall buildings. Like, was there fear and trepidation around, building more structures? What was the impact on the psyche of people?
Well, right after the destruction of those buildings, there was some panic. Okay. Many people who are not even the tall building profession or industry, they are famous, well-known engineers. They even panicked and they said, "This is the end of tall buildings." Okay.
Right.
So I did so much work in terms of research. I had the uh, fortune that I was also at the university. Before that, I designed tall buildings. So I had the research and academic experience, and then our skill, and then I also had the actual practical skill. So I questioned that. I said, if anybody knows the history of tall buildings, they didn't come out of nowhere. Okay, there is a reason for that.
Right.
Why all cities have tall buildings? You cannot eliminate them because we need habitation. We have price of land is exorbitant in commercial district. We cannot build horizontally; it will lead to urban sprawl, and there are many other associated problems.
Right.
The only place we can build is upward. Air is free, and we can go up to the sky, right? So we don't have any problem.
Yeah.
So basically, land price and then the population density. These are the two things that control the development of tall buildings. So anybody who doesn't know the history, and say I have in my conferences when I presented papers on tall buildings, always there was some opposing figure. Why are you destroying the nature with these tall buildings? Why can't you build? Then I said, we will have a long discussion. Maybe we can discuss it over a cup of coffee. Okay, not here. It will take a long time. They should say, do we really need tall buildings?
Right.
That's a good question.
Right.
Okay. Anyway.
So it did impact people to, when the 9/11 happened, but your thesis was it doesn't matter because we'll always need to.
Yes. And I published also. I gave seminar like interviews. A lot of people came. Actually, a lot of people came to see me also. But I explained why we need that, and they were also asking me about the collapse of the buildings. There are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around, and at that time there were more. So they wanted to know what actually happened. So I didn't get too much into it because it has some political angle. So I said, yeah, it could because it's a tubular building. All the columns are in the perimeter. So, and then in the core where the elevator is, it is made of simply a gypsum board and steel columns for the gypsum board for the fireproofing, which is very light. So when the planes hit that core structure, that and the fire started. People were trapped; they could not get down because the elevator area and the stairs were all burning. Okay, so then I wrote papers on this that we should always have concrete cores.
Okay.
Made of concrete so that it has some resistance to impact. So in fact, it is being done. Maybe other people also did that, but I wrote strongly about that.
So what?
And the new structure, the World Trade Center 1 in New York, they have a concrete core. And all the new buildings have concrete cores, okay?
Okay.
So that should have been done in those days, but they never thought that there will be an airplane impacting it. So anyway, I also wrote about it and I, gave my opinion. In this, I think it was the Scientific American magazine. Somebody wrote an article against it, so I kind of
So
wrote another one opposing his viewpoint and whatever I told you.
How long did it take people in your field to accept that, you know what, tall buildings are not going to go away? We will have to build up.
No, it was not in my field. These people were mostly outside my field. They don't deal with all people who are in the field, they understand.
What I also want to ask you is, did the lockdowns, which introduced the work at home concept and leading now to a more hybrid work environment, change anything in terms of the making of more skyscrapers in the future? What is your sense about that?
This is a great question. This COVID-19 has disturbed so many things all over the world, right? And the remote working, remote working at home has taken over our culture, basically, right?
Much, yeah.
And I think what happened, it has many sociological implications. I'm not to go there because families have to now stay together, and it's not just home, working from home, but also the student. They can remotely take courses and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But work is more for business and money and corporations and all this, right? So I think there are some good points and bad points, like everything, pros and cons. I would say the pros are that you can work from home in a relaxed way, and you can do your work, you can take phone calls or Zoom meetings or whatever is needed, but then you can also have some time for your own. So it helps that way, and you don't have to commute to the office.
Right.
So the employees really like it that way.
Sure, there's
But
a
then,
lot of work-life balance, a lot of work-life balance,
yes, yes. So they like it. And the employers also, in a way, like it because they don't have to have large office spaces anymore, giving the rent, paying the rent. The only thing they may be concerned about is the productivity of the employee. Now, if the productivity is still good, they would be happy. They have no problem. It saves money on them. The only people who will be unhappy will be the owners of the tall buildings, right?
Right.
They will not be rented. People don't need it. They'll be vacant. So their investment is gone, right? Building like Sears Tower, very hard that they have been vacant, and many other buildings.
Wow.
All the corporations, the headquarters of the corporations, they are vacant, So they have introduced now the employer that sometimes you have to come to the office, okay? So that's what it is. And then the other thing is, at one time I was optimistic that tall buildings will be needed because we need human chemistry, human interaction, and all that. I wrote about these topics also. So we need a lot of interaction, right? As human beings, we are social creatures.
Absolutely. We're wired.
We cannot replace our interaction with remote working, right?
No, I don't think
So, but the technology with Zoom, like the way you and we are talking now, and you are interviewing me, it's possible. So that was I was still optimistic, but now I am not. I'm not very optimistic. I'm not pessimistic either. I'm not a pessimistic person, so I would not say I'm pessimistic. I am more like a possibilist.
Okay.
Possibilistic. I will say it is possible, not possible. It may happen, not happen. We don't know fully. Okay, there is a possibility it might happen, right? So that's my opinion that tall buildings have taken a blow.
Have taken a blow, but what about tall buildings not for working, but for residential?
Yes, residential tall buildings will still be needed because people will need space to live, right?
Mhm.
And as people are moving from rural areas to cities for opportunities, more space will be needed, and you cannot just spread it out too much. It has other problems. So you have to still go vertically. So it will be needed for that, but not for business and commercial uh, things.
So, okay, so if I understand, skyscrapers for business and so on is not likely to be needed in the same way, but for residential use, they will be.
Yeah. I may add here, though, many of the buildings these days are also multi-use buildings. Okay. So what they do, they can build a tall building, make them all residences, and then some maybe for hotels and some for business, commercial activities, and recreation or other facilities, whatever. So it is a multifunctional or multi-use buildings. And actually that has been started for a while. And actually Dr. Fazlur Khan, he mentioned in one of his papers that this will be a trend. Like in the old days, like if you go to a store, the owner would live upstairs,
Right.
and the business was downstairs, right? So it is something similar. You have people living there, people working there, and even shopping malls could be at the lower levels. So mercantile. So you have shopping malls, you have hotels, you have living spaces, you have corporations, commercial spaces.
Now,
That's the trend now,
now can
or more of a trend.
okay. Can they convert the buildings into residential, uh,
Yeah.
spaces?
Yeah, this question has been bugging me also, and like many others. This question often comes up because people keep on changing. They are not making money with one type of occupancy, they want to make something else, right? The problem is when you have a residential building, the layout of the building is different.
Right.
The functionality, the mechanical functionality, HVAC, and everything is different. When you have a commercial building, it's different, right? You have a hotel, it's a little different. And if you have shopping mall or so, the layout and the structure and HVAC systems, everything has to be changed. And that's a big challenge.
Right.
That's why I don't know.
And an
I've been retired for a
investment.
while, so I don't know what is going on. I try to keep track, but that is a problem.
It is because there's also a big monetary investment in making those changes, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay. Now, I was just wondering, you wrote a book, it's an autobiography called The Bridge, where you talked about your life, your upbringing, moving to Canada, moving to the US, your work on tall buildings, giving back to Bangladesh. Is it still available on Amazon?
Yes, it is still there.
Okay, great. So listeners, please, if you're interested in this, look it up. Um,
And also the biography that I wrote on Fazlur Khan and his work, that is also still available.
Available. Okay. Well, Mama, thank you so much for enlightening me and our listeners on tall buildings and your remarkable contribution to the field. I don't think I'll ever look at tall buildings in the same way again. And finally, I'm so proud of you. I want to thank you for being an uncle I could get sage advice and support from as I took care of my parents, and also for the multitude of conversations that we've had on so many different subjects. To our listeners, please share this video with your friends, your relatives, children, grandchildren, and all your loved ones. This is a fascinating area to go into. You can see about tall buildings, it's very multifaceted. So I encourage all of you to, go out there and if you're interested and inspired by my uncle, go forth. Thanks everyone for watching, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe.